Welcome back to Michigan Matters, where we're focusing on autism. Another disability on the autism spectrum is Asperger Syndrome. Many people don't know much about it, and here to help educate us is Dr. Nick Dubin, who was diagnosed with Asperger Syndrome in 2004. He's also the author of 2 books, Asperger Syndrome and Bullying and Asperger Syndrome and Anxiety. Dr. Dubin, thanks so much for being here with us.
You're very welcome.
So I guess the first question has to be, how do you explain Asperger Syndrome?
Asperger Syndrome is a developmental disorder on the autism spectrum, and really what it results in is differences in perception, how we perceive the world, and differences in how we interact with people, so that we may find social interactions a little bit more challenging than other people would. And we also, I think, have certain gifts that people without Asperger syndrome don't have. We have the ability to focus for really long periods of time and develop a certain kind of interest and have that grow and possibly lead to a passion or a career. So I think that there are definitely some drawbacks with having Asperger's, but there are also a lot of potential gifts that somebody can have.
When were you diagnosed, and how were you diagnosed?
I was actually diagnosed in 2004, and it was a long process after a job student teaching disaster that didn't go very well, and I sort of had to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, what's going on? You know, why are these kinds of things happening to me? And I went to the DSM, looked up Asperger's, and read a few books on it, and it really just made sense. And then I went and got a diagnosis, and ever since then my career has really taken off as far as the advocacy work that I do and the speaking and pursuing a doctoral degree.
Sure. And as far as symptoms, what kinds of things were you experiencing?
As I said earlier, difficulty in social interaction, inability to shift focus from one task to another. Things such as that really made life challenging for me. But on the other hand, I could see that I had a lot of talents, and it didn't really make sense how those two things could go together. And then when I read about Asperger's, the pieces of the puzzle, yeah, were kind of put together.
Now, this is something that, in fact, you've written not 1 but 2 books, as I mentioned. This first one, Bullying, about how people with Asperger's children are often the targets of bullying. And why did you decide to write this?
Well, number one, I was bullied quite a bit in middle school and high school, and just from the research that I've done and from the people with Asperger's who I've met, I know that we're very easy targets just because we have a lot of social naivete. We can be gullible at times. So we believe everything that we hear, and that can set someone up to be a very easy target. So I really, from a first-person perspective and from an academic perspective, I wanted to give professionals real solutions for how to curb this destructive trend. And I think the information in this book can be applicable to the general population, not just for people with Asperger's. As
far as bullying in children who are suffering from Asperger's and parents, what kinds of things do you tell parents in terms of what they can do to help their child?
I think it's really, really important to get their child some sort of a peer aide or a mentor inside school so that they have the ability to be with a friend at lunch, so that they're not sitting by themselves, so that they really are integrated in the mainstream setting. And I think it's really important to teach the kid with Asperger's, the child with Asperger's, when they are being bullied, because oftentimes they can't tell the difference between teasing and vicious bullying. So you need to kind of differentiate that for the child. And I think that should actually be written in a child's IEP. Normally the IEP focuses generally on educational goals, academic goals, but this is a social goal, and people with Asperger's typically have social difficulties, so that's where they need the most help.
You've also written a second book, Asperger Syndrome and Anxiety, and what was the genesis of why you decided to write this?
Well, anxiety is often a comorbid sign or symptom that goes along with Asperger's, and there had been no book written for the adult population specifically to help them with stress management, and I thought it was really important to get some advice to that population, because I would have wanted it. If I was newly diagnosed, that's the kind of book that I would have wanted to read.
And I know you're also speaking to organizations and groups about this, and talk a little bit about that real briefly.
One of the things I do is I go around the country and I speak at conferences and I speak at book signings and try to just get the word out that people with Asperger's are unique individuals, special individuals. They can thrive under the right circumstances. Oftentimes those right circumstances aren't there for them, aren't in place for them. But I just really am, I kind of consider myself an advocate, and I really want to get the word out that people with Asperger's have a lot of potential. We've seen, you know, Mozart, Albert Einstein, Thomas Jefferson. These are people who we think would have been diagnosed with Asperger's.
Oh, you truly are inspirational, and I want to thank you for being here this morning to talk to us about this. And if you would like to contact Nick, visit his website. It's aspergerwisdom.com. And coming up, we have a representative from Eastern Michigan University who is here to tell us about a unique program they have dealing with autism. We're back after this little break.